In this presentation today, we'll be answering the question, what is the role of human geography in a changing world? We should be framing this question within education and academia in order to attempt to answer the question. Our key argument is that the role of human geography is very crucial in the Department of Education and its progress, specifically to our understanding of how the creation of space of exchange between communities of practice influence how GeogEd will develop in the changing world. In order to explore our argument, we will look in three areas. Firstly, we will reflect on our interview with the lecturer Dr. Matt Finn, establishing and investigating the key point raised by him in response to our questions regarding academic research. By doing so, we shall get a deeper insight into his ideas and concepts that are at the forefront of understanding this area of discipline. Secondly, we will explore how ideas of diversity, equality, and inclusion fits into modern geography and how we ensure these concepts are mainstreamed in education, which has recently been made possible through the rising growth of decolonizing geographies. Finally, we shall investigate changes which may occur to education and fieldwork and how both pandemic and climate change will shape the education of it. As mentioned earlier, as a part of this presentation, we had the privilege to interview Dr. Matt Finn, a senior lecturer in human geography at the University of Exeter, whose research focuses on contemporary conditions of education and works to understand how childhood and young people's lives vary globally. Prior to our interview, Matt gave us his paper, Looking Ahead to the Future of GeogEd, Creating Spaces of Exchange Between Communities of Practice, and having read this, we created questions which he then asked Matt.
The paper argues that GeogEd has a key role to play in promoting spaces of exchange between communities of practice, which have an input within the shared endeavours of geography and education. Within these communities of practice, there is a shared interest from which expertise can be developed. Both geography and education can be understood as a shared interest and bring about lots of different communities who want to develop expertise. Therefore, the article highlights that GeogEd facilitates interaction between early career and established colleagues within a community, but also between communities. Matt also raised some interesting points in response to our questions, notably how important decolonizing the discipline and promoting diversity amongst staff and students is. For example, the vast majority of senior lecturers at Exeter are white males. Communities of practice can somewhat help in mitigating these issues, but these issues are structural as much as they are individual. Black students, for example, proportionally go to university more than their white peers, but the Black students tend to go to particular types of universities and less so to Russell Group and Oxbridge universities. Matt also brought up how changes across the past 7 years have occurred in how A-level module content is developed. What is taught within geography will change as geography focuses on a changing world. Refreshment of fieldwork and research will refresh geographic discourse and education. Through both Matt and our own research, we look to gain an insight into spaces of education. Geographies of education have taught us that educating geographically extends beyond the boundaries of the traditional classroom to alternative spaces such as workplaces, community parks, to the more intimate spaces of home. In these environments, children can feel less intimidated than they do in more formal settings. Along with this, the number of sites of education are increasing, which can be linked with development of technology, allowing it to take place in more places, and so a much more complex research environment has been produced. Matt, along with other lecturers at the University of Exeter, created the Spaces of Education Research Programme. In this, they work to coordinate the expertise, research and scholarship at Exeter on the spatialities of education and learning in society. It looks at a variety of areas in which education can be analysed spatially. The programme investigates socio-emotional differences, environmental relationships, community-led resilience and sustainability practices, and ultimately ways in which geography is taught. It is important that geography as a discipline continues to explore these relationships.
Ensuring equality, diversity and inclusion within geographies of education also plays a key role within human geography in a changing world. Donnelly has identified geometries of power, which shape and reinforce uneven spatial mobilities and social reproduction among young people. This suggests that pathways to education, particularly higher education, are mandated by expectations patterned by class, gender and race. This can be highlighted when reflecting on the whiteness of many university campuses. Matt Finn's work within GeogEd has the aims to be inclusive and facilitative, promoting communities of research. GeogEd hopes that expanding the breadth of this group will allow a greater diversity of members, more interesting conversations, and hence a broadening and deepening of research across geographies of education. Furthermore, GeogEd will be an inclusive space for anyone interested in the geography of education areas, looking across learning spaces to understand the student experience. Furthermore, moving from primary school into secondary school through educational transitions involve processes of selection that reproduce social inequalities. This is because more wealthy people are able to afford tutors to help their children with entrance exams such as the 11+, which may enhance their opportunity of getting into selective schools, highlighting an inequality within geographies of education. Moreover, Black students are not as highly represented as in teachers or curriculum, so may feel excluded, as Matt Finn explained to us. As a result, Matt Finn and his colleagues work within GeogEd to ensure educational spaces are safe and allow people to thrive. Also, Black students have a higher entrance rate into university than white peers. For example, in 2021, 33% of students who went to university were white, compared to 48.6% who were Black, as the UK government website shows. However, Black students go to particular unis such as London Metropolitan, where 1/3 of first-year undergraduate students are Black, because cultures of certain unis make it difficult for people to be heard and taken seriously. In addition, the growth of feminist research from 1980s reflected the feminization of the education environment, which added new threads to the curriculum, such as the school's role in social reproduction of gender and sexual identities in schools. Ensuring equality, diversity, and inclusion in geography of education has led to the decolonising of geography and education. For example, the work of the Decolonising Geography Educators Group is a group of geography educators who are looking at ways to decolonise the curriculum. Their aim is to challenge the reproduction of colonial practices of knowledge in our classrooms. Furthermore, the Royal Geographical Society has said that although they have made progress in the approach to critically engage with the history of their society, they still need to do more to establish equality, diversity, and inclusion within the role they play. Despite this, the Royal Geographical Society have a geography and education group which hold conferences for people to attend, which provides a space of exchange to allow people to speak and have an influence in the creation of new ideas, which Matt explained to us. However, there is still an inequality within geographies of education, because geography might not be a key study in the curriculum depending on the place of education origin, meaning not everyone can pursue the study to a further education level. As a result, geography will continue to have an important role in encouraging discussion and making changes within the subject.
During our interview with Matt, he commented on the future of geography within education with regards to fieldwork. We wanted to explore this further. Due to the prevalence of climate change, questions of sustainability in relation to field trips have become a big debate within the discipline, and education settings are having to adapt. One solution to address this is for the journeys to become part of the fieldwork, therefore enabling students to experience different places and cultures, but more responsibly and environmentally consciously. Alternatively, we have seen how virtual field trips are becoming more common. In fact, we ourselves had the option to undertake our Bristol field trip virtually due to anxieties surrounding COVID. Virtual field trips therefore catered to reducing the impact on the environment, addressing questions of sustainability, but also to any potential future travel restrictions, which given the current climate with relation to coronavirus, we now can't rule out. Moreover, it removes barriers of accessibility, enabling us to experience faraway places through webcams and recordings. The pandemic has resulted in a huge change to education spaces and how and where learning takes place. The learning environment is no longer confined to a classroom and can take place anywhere. This can remove barriers to learning and open up opportunities for students to work remotely. As a result, geographers with a focus on geography education and geography of education will be very important in how geography goes forward in this changing world.
To conclude, the role of human geography is very crucial in the Department of Education and its progress, especially when understanding the creation of spaces of exchange between communities of practice and how this comes to influence GeogEd, as Matt Finn explored. GeogEd is constantly changing due to development and progress in concepts such as technology, diversity, and globalization. Spaces of education are vital in order to get a deeper insight into human geography, specifically what is taught, how, and to who. Equality and inclusion are important to modern geography as it is presently ensured that these concepts are mainstreamed in education. Effects of events like pandemics and concepts like technology, development, and globalization have lasting effects on the future of education and academia.